My name is Damon Brown. Welcome to Bring Your Worth TV. Thank you for coming through. I'm an entrepreneurial coach to side hustlers, solopreneurs, other non-traditional entrepreneurs like yourself. This is Bring Your Worth TV. I come to you live Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. And you can subscribe for free. Join about 18,000 of y'all plus that have come through and subscribed over the last few years. I appreciate every single one of y'all. You can get my book, The Complete Bring Your Worth Collection, behind my big head over here. It's actually some basically a best of for the past 7 or 8 years. And it has my best-selling book, The Ultimate Bites as Entrepreneur. Thank you for making it a favorite. The eponymous book, Bring Your Worth, which kind of started this whole TV as well as publishing company, as well as my personal favorite, Built From Now, How to Know Your Power, See Your Abundance, and Nourish the World, which I wrote kind of like when me and my kids were at home in the height of the pandemic and really trying to find a way to give back to y'all and to get y'all inspired. And it means so much to me as far as the support with the book, as well as with the TV show, which also started in the pandemic back in 2020. You can get the complete collection wherever fine books are sold, as well as at my website at davidbrown.net. You can also go ahead and listen to the audiobook for free right now at bringyourworth.tv, maybe after we're done hanging out today. If you want to catch more of Bring Your Worth TV and you're not really into YouTube or other places, you can also catch it over on Twitch, which you might be watching live right now. Shout out to my fellow Twitch streamers, as well as watching the classic episodes over at Spotify. You can listen. A lot of these live shows you don't actually need to watch. There's some visual things that I do. There's going to be some stuff and products and services that I share that are going to help you level up, but you can actually just listen to it. A lot of my favorite podcasts that I listen to. Shout out to Colin and Samir. Shout out to One Song Podcast. I love y'all, what you are doing. Some of my favorite podcasts are visual. You can watch the videos, and whenever I can, particularly if my kids aren't jumping on my head, then I'm able to go and watch it at my leisure. But just listening to an audio is amazing too, and this is designed in that way. So you just hear my voice. I live in Las Vegas. You can walk in mountains, or hills. I'm more like a hill guy. walk on the hills, chill out with your folks, whatever, and just listen to the vibes and catch some of this game, hopefully, and hopefully it helps you level up. Same thing with the books. You can definitely listen to the audiobook wherever you like. If you missed it last Sunday, had a special program, a marathon, Smart Summer Travel Secrets 2025 here in Vegas. My kids are about to get out of school because it's already 100 degrees. If you see me start sweating, then that's why. I'm not nervous, guys. I promise. After seeing y'all for about 430 episodes, I'm not nervous anymore. But I do run hot, so I like to be a little bit dressed up for you guys. But man, even with the AC on in my place and all that, woo, man, it's getting hot. So it's kind of time for summer travel. If you're based here in the States, Memorial Day is coming in like 2 weeks, which is insane. In other words, the kids are about to get out of school. Memorial Day is about to start. This will get you into that vibe. In the special episode, I talk about how you can do smart budget business travel. Because if you're running a business, they don't talk about that. Where if you got a new client and they have the bag or you're getting a contract from them, you still need to fly to wherever they are. I don't care if it's we might be in a hybrid and Zoom world, but people still want to see you face to face sometimes. So how do you pay for those things? What are some strategies and hacks? I've had couple businesses for a long time. And so I'm sharing as much game as possible with that, as well as how you can do affordable holiday travel, whether it's the holidays during the summer or the holidays that tend to happen later on in the winter with the religious holidays. So lots of game in there. It's about 2.5 hours long. You can even skip along because it's bookmarked to the good stuff in there. Hope you guys enjoy it. So today's show, make your product real. It is so important when we're working on a business to find a way to actually make our stuff a reality. We sometimes have these ideas in our head and we're not exactly sure where to go, how to handle them, what to do. So sometimes we need to make a service and sometimes we need to make a product, a physical thing, something that's tangible. Again, back to my book here or my book here, those are physical things. So for today, we're going to talk about a couple ways and get help to make physical things. First of all, as far as designing it, and then secondly, as far as creating it. This is part of a bigger series. If you're just coming in right now, or if you happen to miss it, this whole month, this whole discussion, we're doing a whole series on Start Your Business Now. So through this entire month. So it's going to be 4 episodes. Last week's episode talked about how to get your idea off the ground. And that got into creating a storefront, that got into having a website, and that got into creating a framework so that when you do get your product and service going, then you'll have a framework for it. I highly recommend hang out with us right here. But as soon as we're done, go back and catch the first episode. And of course, there will be 2 more episodes with the remainder of this month of May. The whole playlist is right here. Excuse me. If you want to go ahead and watch the previous one, you can. That was exactly a week ago. It's every Wednesday. And then for the upcoming ones, you can actually go to the playlist and then click on the appropriate videos. They're already set up, and then hit the notification button, and then that will the algorithm or the platform will send you a message when this goes live. So when you have more questions, you go in and we can take care of that. Next week's episode is going to be about how to get paid. We like that part. And then the last episode, the very last episode, is about how to sell your company. I've gone through the whole process. I ended up selling my company, Cuddler, going on 10 years ago. And I know a lot of people that have done major sales of their company. And so I'm giving as much game as possible to help you get things right as we get into the new year, or at least get into the new summer. Excuse me. All this is sponsored by Shortform, your ultimate partner when it comes to books and book related content. I'm a big fan of short term, short form. I promise I use short form. I just can't talk today. And then let's go ahead and take a look at it. All right, here's short form. I'm already logged in, so unfortunately can't see the front page. But short form is awesome for 2 different reasons. The first way is that you can actually learn more about a book or an author that you're curious about. The second way is you can dive deeper into one you already care about. So let's say you hear about Rick Rubin, and you might not be familiar with him. You might not know that he co-founded Def Jam, or end up becoming this master producer from anywhere from the Dixie Chicks, all the way to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, all the way to Jay Z in his later years. And so you're like, okay, I want to learn more about Rick Rubin. So you go and type in Rick Rubin. We're going to go author focus today. And it's creative act. You're like, cool, he has a book. Okay, so then I can go and click on it and get a summary of the book. Bet. Great. I can buy the book through here. It definitely encourages buying the book and supporting us authors as opposed to just getting the cliff notes of it. If you're old enough to know cliff notes, then you know what I'm getting at. But not only does it give a nice breakdown of the book, but then you scroll down and look at that. Then you start getting information about the author and or connected to the book. So Rick Rubin, hit about 2 years ago when the book came out. I have the creative act over on my shelf. I talked about it in the previous episode if you want to look it up at bringyourworth.tv. But he was on a tear about 2 years ago and was on a whole bunch of podcasts, dropped so much wisdom because he tends to be relatively reclusive. And then they got some of them getting back to 2023, as I said. And then the best ones, or some of the best ones, they got lined up right here. So you can learn more about an author you're curious about and or about a specific book. Or, as you can tell, there might be a certain book that you absolutely adore. See, these are some of my favorite books right here, particularly Fast Food Nation. Shout out to Eric Schlosser, as well as the 48 Laws of Power. Shout out to my man, Robert Greene. So if there's a certain 48 Law of Power that you had forgot, and the book is massive, it's like 200, 300,000 words. I'm not kidding. Someone borrowed my physical copy. I haven't seen it in years. I need to get a new copy, but I do have it in audiobook form. So if I want to talk about a specific law of power with you as one of my coaching clients or on the TV show, then I can go and click on here and be like, oh, okay, what is the law of power, law 18? Don't isolate yourself, which I mention all the time. So that's why it's important to have connections to other people. And it has a breakdown of it. And so I don't need to get the big book off the shelf. So this is a book that I know pretty much inside and out, but there's 48 laws of power and it's 300,000 words. I've been reading the book since, I don't know, 2 decades ago, back when I lived in New Orleans. Shout out to Nola. And so we're talking 2 decades plus. This allows you to get it quickly and simply and strongly. Short form is actually has a special partnership with us and the BringYourWorth.tv audience. You're getting 20% off as well as a free trial. These terms and conditions may change. So if you're listening to me or talking to me live, in fact, feel free to jump in the comments if you like. Then it's on right now. If you're watching a rerun, then it might be still happening. But we definitely have a partnership. Go and click on it, see what's happening, and they'll tell you the special deal that's happening with that. Shout out to Short Form for helping to make this happen. When we're talking about making your product real, that kind of ties into what I talked about this week on my free newsletter at joindamon.me. Joindamon.me comes out every Wednesday morning. And what I talked about today was making mistaking quiet work for stagnation. What I mean by that is sometimes things get really quiet and really silent, not in the sense of, oh, okay, it's a night quiet time and I'm hanging out with my kids or I'm by myself and it's all cozy. We just had a lot of rain here in Las Vegas, which I love rain. And so all cozy in bed and all that stuff. No, I mean that quiet and that silence when you're revving to go, when you want to change, when you're uncomfortable and you want to make some new stuff happen and it's just not coming together yet. We can mistake that for failing. We can mistake that for not doing anything. We can mistake that for us just being wrong in our hypothesis. You might have a certain vision as far as where you want things to go, what product or service you think should be out there, where you should be financially and otherwise, what impact you should be making in the world. And sometimes it feels like it's not just gelling quite yet. But then ideally, you have these really high highs where you make your first sale, or when you're on a stage. In my case, I'm a professional speaker. So when you're on a stage and you've been wanting to get on that stage for a long time, I argue that it's the woodworking, the time behind the scenes that allows those major peaks to happen. So if we end up being resentful when we have things that are quiet, that's just going to make it harder when we actually do have those opportunities because we're not going to be ready. There's literally, I can make a list. If you know me, I'm into index cards. I got 3 or 4 index cards up here of things that I'm waiting to happen, or I'm building to happen, or I've been working behind the scenes. In some cases, for years. I am not exaggerating. For years. And I'm confident that those things will happen. But there's a timing to things. And also, sometimes when those things don't move forward, then you have an opportunity to turn your back a little bit and get back in the workshop, make it tighter. There's stuff that I've wanted to launch literally for months, and I've had a setback, or things haven't worked out how I expected, or it wasn't quite what I wanted. And then I was talking to a good friend about it. You might be watching, shout out to you, where I'm like, oh, wait, why I keep coming back to do this thing. And every time I come back better. I was like, wow, I just realized that. The frustration of wanting to do something over and over again. But then you start to come back that third time. In this case, it's actually the fourth time I'm trying to do this thing. And I'm like, wait a second. How did I get more game? How did that happen? I didn't notice it was happening. And I mean this 500% sincerely from a very humble place, not as a flex. The thing is that when you're woodworking, when you're in that quiet, you don't recognize the work you're putting in. It's like, again, the classic analogy of being in the gym, and suddenly you got some stronger muscles. It's like, wait, how did that happen? You're in a situation where you're in a rough dynamic with like a family member or somebody you care about or whatever, and then suddenly something happens and you handle it fine. You're like, well, how did I handle it fine? I was just flying off the handle, a moment ago. You're learning. And so when we're talking about making your product real, that's the behind the scenes. You get into trouble when you say, this product's going to come out. Save this space. I'm going to do this. I found that we tend to get tied up in that because then it creates unnecessary pressure. Instead, just do the work. Just shut up and do the work. That's all. When you shut up and do the work, then you're able to build in quiet. And then as you get it closer to where it's supposed to be, then you start to bring it out into the world. So the first in this series that we had a week ago, we talked about building stuff and setting up the infrastructure essentially. so that things can thrive. Now, with this episode, we're talking about building something, creating something, and getting partnership from that level. Again, today's newsletter talks about that. Shout out to y'all that subscribe. You can subscribe for free, and whether it's to Bring Your Worth TV and or to joindamon.me. And so when we're talking about making a product better, or actually just making a product, big question: how do I design when I'm not a professional? How do I design when I'm not professional? That is tough. That can quite literally be $1 million question. It's similar to the discussion of how do I create this when I'm not a programmer, or how do I get this thing going when this isn't connected to my profession. One of the best ways to do, of course, is to partner with people. I've done lots of videos about partnering, as well as signing contracts with folks over at bringyourworth.tv. Feel free to go through the archives. We've talked about it quite a bit. Another thing is to actually hire people for that specific thing. And that hiring could be you give them a flat amount of money, say, okay, I'll give you X amount of dollars. Here you go. Or you give them a certain amount of equity or a piece of whatever you're building. Okay, why don't you go ahead and design stuff for me or create things for me or program things for me? And then I'll give you 5% of the company. So that means that if the company were to be acquired, or if you were to get acquired means exiting, that means it was bought from somebody else. We'll talk about that in the final episode of the series. Or if you were to get investment, then they would own a piece of it and then their value would go up. So you're essentially sharing the wealth. What usually happens is that for companies that have a whole lot of money, or if you happen to personally have a whole lot of money that you can invest into this, bless you if you do, then it will usually end up being a financial payout to say, hey, can you design this? Or can you program this for me or build this for me? Here's, I don't know, let's say $1,000. If you end up being cash poor, which doesn't mean you're poor, but you're cash poor, in other words, your cash flow has to go somewhere else, then it's usually a piece of the company. With the companies that I have built, it was one where it was just myself, so there's nothing to share. And then my second company called Cuddler, I worked with two co-founders. They had actually already started to build the company, and I joined in a little bit later. And then we ended up divvying up the percentage of the company based on the work that we were doing, as far as how we contributed, so forth and so on. I was essentially the COO, so the creative chief operating officer. I'm so used to the creative world. Chief operating officer, and I was also the CMO, the chief marketing officer. So I helped launch the app as well as do a lot of the day-to-day stuff, which again I talked about extensively in the complete Bring Your Worth collection, specifically in the ultimate bite-sized entrepreneur. So my role dictated how much of a percentage we end up doing. So when we got acquired about a year after we launched, then that check that came to our respective bank accounts, that was based on percentages that we did. So if you're going to be working with someone else, often there's two options: to give them a flat financial fee or to go ahead and give them a piece of the company. And actually, there's a smaller third option. And the third option is actually doing a barter where there might be stuff that they want to get done with their business or in regards to them, as far as, like, let's say that they're an amazing artist, but they don't know how to launch a business or how to launch their product. And let's say you know how to launch a product, but you're not a great artist. Then you two could barter, and then there's no financial exchange at all. So there's different ways to do it, but the most common way would be giving a piece of the company or giving some type of flat fee. For the folks that have worked with me, shout out to Beck Loss. Her name is BECLOSS. You can look her up online. She's actually been my cover designer for this book, as well as that book, and a lot of my independent books that I've done over the past 10 years. And so we end up working from a flat fee standpoint. And that works for us. It works for both of us. So finding out the dynamic makes perfect sense. It also requires, most importantly, a level of honesty. My father, shout out to him, he's an artist. He's fantastic as far as drawing, graphic arts, and all that. I got some of his genes, obviously, but mine turned into words. I'm good with words. I'm decent with language. I'm captivated by communication, but I couldn't draw my way out of a paper bag. And so I know that I would need to, when I started doing my books, I would need to hire a designer like Beck Laws. Shout out to Beck. Otherwise, if I'm saying I can do it all myself, and then you see one of my cover arts, you'd be like, what's wrong with Damon's book? I'm not going to buy his book. And so you have to know what your strengths are. So in this case, we're talking about designers, but it could be something else. It could be programming. I'm a decent programmer, but I'm far from the best. It could be marketing. It could be writing, as far as the language, as far as when you're launching things. So keep that in mind and find out what your weakness is. We can talk about this more in a future episode. Give a shout in the comments if you know where your weakness are. Weakness is ours. I know what ours. Weakness is. I'd love to hear, as well as what your strengths are. Again, I don't mind being transparent about that. And to be honest, if it's not a strength of yours, maybe you can find someone you can collaborate with through the great network here on the channel. Specifically, and I'm talking about my own stuff, if you want to get into design, a good stepping point, if you're like, Damon, I'm not going to learn Photoshop. I couldn't Photoshop my way out of a paper bag. I don't know what to do, but I'm willing to learn. Canva is a great way to start, and they literally just launched, I think within the last year, might have been way more recent than that. They just launched an enterprise edition. Enterprise, if you ever see the word enterprise, enterprise means business. No pun intended. So they just launched a specific Canva. And if you've heard of Canva, let me back up a little bit. Canva essentially is like Photoshop, but simplified to the nth degree. It's been really popular. I have older relatives that are love it and use it, and they're making. I use Photoshop a lot, so that's where I do use design is with the thumbnails and other things that you might see, things related to this program, and they're making stuff that looks way better than mine. But they're using something as simple as Canva. Canva is a what you see is what you get, or a WYSIWYG, as we'd say in the old school. So really straightforward. It shows you right here. You're doing the equivalent of PowerPoints with the docs. You see it blown up right there. Presentations. Looks like Jesus, the guy from Jesus and Mary. Looks like Jesus. And then, sorry, inside joke there. If you get the joke, then we're definitely friends. Then there's Sheets, which is similar to Excel, Microsoft Excel, photo editor, websites, etc., and videos. So I have my own video things that I use. Shout out to Adobe Premiere. That's what I started using recently, as well as InShot, which you used back in the day. You can use it for that. You can do some stuff with AI. I mean, it's a vibe, and it's really popular. See, and then we have Enterprise right there, right? And then you have different templates. Now, enterprise, they're talking about contact sales. You don't have to get that deep. You can also work within a different canvas right here, depending on the level that you're at. For me, I would be a Canva Pro, maybe go into a Canva Teams, because I work with folks like Beck and other people that help my stuff shine. Fantastic application. If you haven't heard of it, definitely check it out. There's a special they have going on with Bring Your Worth TV, so be sure and click on it, and then you'll be able to learn what your special discount is. So shout out to them. If you're like Damon, no, you don't understand. I don't want to design anything. I don't want to design my product or my idea, but I don't want to do the website and all that stuff. I got you. Another program, which I think they're relatively new, but I just heard of them recently. They reached out and I looked at their stuff. They have really interesting stuff. It's Design Pickle. Design Pickle. Love the name. And Design Pickle allows you to actually hire designers through this marketplace at levels. So I get some of this off there. There we go. Right. So you can go ahead and white label is a way to do it. White label means that someone's doing something behind the scenes, but they're doing it special for you, but it's private to the rest of the world. In other words, if you wanted them to design whatever you're working on, but for their name or the Design Pickle logo or whatever not to be on it, then they got you. That's the white label. excuse me, and then you can break it down. The creative management platform, it's a fancy name for similar to a CMS. And CMS is what you would use at like a WordPress, or if you had a blog going back in the day. It's basically a management system for all the content that you have. They have the equivalent of that, but for your designs. So that's one. Second thing is designers on demand. So someone, if you were like, I need a designer to do to do this at this deadline at this rate, they got you. There's someone that's going to come through and be able to support you on that. And then most importantly, flat rate design. Depending on what you negotiate with people that you're working with, they might get a percentage, which is another, I guess, another element here, but that rarely happens. But they might get a percentage of whatever you're creating. This happens way more in, say, the children's book industry, because with children's books, if you have kids or if you're the guardian of kids, you got nieces and nephews, you know the deal. If it's a children's book, there's probably going to be a ton of illustrations. So often, when it comes to children's books, the illustrator and the author share the royalties 50-50. If it's a really strong illustrator, it might even be a different type of arrangement where the author who wrote the book actually gets less. Of course, when you get to adult books, then you're not having as many images things unless you're talking about graphic novels. I digress. The flat rate design basically says you're guaranteed to pay X amount of dollars. You get that, and then you're able to move on with your business without having to have the complicated contracts. Again, Design Pickle has some good stuff going on. Be sure to check them out. And they do have some stuff going on with specifically BringYourWorth.tv. And I'd be remiss if I did this episode without talking about this. Real artist ship is wrong. What Steve Jobs meant. Steve Jobs had a lot of issues. I was living in Silicon Valley. Actually, I've been in the same rooms with him. So I was around when he was around, right before he passed away. Rest in peace. And one of the things that people often quote him as saying is real artist shit, and which is true. In other words, if you don't have a product or a service or a thing that other people can actually enjoy or participate in, then you're not really doing what you're doing. He was a very black and white guy, and so a little bit extreme. I give some nuance to that and basically say, look, you also don't want to ship crap. You don't want to ship something that's going to disappoint folks. I don't want to send a book out, and have it at the bookstore or have you guys buy it from davinbrown.net and then you guys are super disappointed with it. Like, that's not. So you don't want to ship anything. But so many of us, which I think he was getting at, so many of us stop at the what's called the ideation stage. We have this idea in our head. Again, I've talked about this in previous episodes. I'll regularly run into people and they'll be talking about the same idea that they had ages ago, but they haven't moved an inch. It goes back to what I was talking about with the newsletter at the top of the show. Like, we have to find that balance between doing that quiet work and moving forward, even though we're not guaranteed to have that success or that time in the spotlight. But sometimes we're so eager to have that positive feedback and be like, oh, I want to ship it right now. That adrenaline, that serotonin kick that happens with it. And then we don't get it, and then we just stop. We quit. I don't want you to do that. That's one of the reasons why I do the work I do with coaching. I don't want you to do that. So be sure and watch this episode because I think it'll help you if you're feeling stuck right now. As well as I mentioned it in this segment because sometimes we need the element or the little spice from another person or another organization to help us get over the hump. If I was waiting to ship a book until I was great at designing a cover, then you guys wouldn't have any of my books on your shelf at all. That doesn't make any sense. Instead, I partner with someone like Beck, shout out to Beck, or partner with someone else, and then they're able to do their part. I'm able to do my part, and I'm able to ship the books, including the, I don't know, 9 books I've done in the past 10 years. None of those books would have happened if I'd wait on me to become the best designer. Instead, you partner with other people or other organizations, and then they can level up your product or service. The fact is, I have this TV show, I have my own publishing company, I have my private coaching practice, I got other things that I'm doing that are almost 100% solo Damon, or I have a little bit of help from the outside. But all those things require some type of input from people outside of Damon. Not only does that keep your sanity, but also allows you to partner with people who can help your stuff really shine. What are the areas where you feel like you should be? What are the areas where you feel like you're strong at? Where do you feel like you should level up? And where are those areas where you should outsource it? Give it to somebody else. For me, it's design. You don't want something that's 100% designed by Damon. You really don't. At least as far as drawing, you don't want that. I've designed other things. I'm decent with my hands, but drawing, that's not it. Maybe in 10 years, I'll be in a different place. But for right now, that's where I need the most support. You're watching Bring Your Worth TV. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown, here to help you as a side hustler, solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. I'm here live on Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You can subscribe for free. And today we are talking about, excuse me, making your product real. How do you make your product real? It's an important thing because if you don't have a real product, then what are you doing? How can you help? The nitty gritty. How can I build my product? How can I build my product? It depends on what you want to do. In my years of coaching, I feel like products come down into two basic areas. There's products, and truly in the sense of the word, and there's services. There's products or physical things, again, like my books right here, and then there's services that are like AWS, which would be almost at a domain, Amazon Web Services, or iCloud, which is what Apple uses for the cloud services. Cuddler, which was a platform slash app that me and my two co-founders launched a while ago that connected people for hugs, similar to Tinder or Grinder, but it was platonic. That is a service. A product would be, again, a physical book, something that you have, that you hold. If you're getting a patent on something, then it's probably something that's going to create a product. If you're trademarking something, then often ends up being something that's closer to a service. A lot of stuff that I do, excuse me, a lot of stuff that I do is a service. So it has a different type of element to it. But there's a lot of people that I coach that do products. I've coached folks that create clothes, so they're clothing designers or clothing creators. Folks that have patented like like certain boxes or drones or things like that. That's part of the game too. Depending on the direction that you're going in, whether it's a pure product, we'll call it that, or a service, then you have to find partners that are going to allow that to happen. When it comes to something like a service, then you're probably going to need someone who knows how to program, someone that knows how to market, and someone that knows how to actually implement the thing, where it would go, who it would go to. That ties into marketing a little bit, but it's a little bit closer to like the visionary slash entrepreneur. I know some folks that are all three. They're like, I'm going to design it slash program it. I'm going to market the heck out of it. I know exactly who it's supposed to go to. If you're fortunate enough to have that trifecta, great on you. There's certain things I've launched where I've been able to be that trifecta, but it doesn't always happen because often we have a weak spot in that. We don't know how to market it, or we're not exactly sure who the audience is for it, or we're not sure how to program or create the thing. When it comes to a product, we have very, very similar dynamics. How are you going to design a physical product? Like the engineer and so forth, like the person who's actually going to design it, like design it on paper. Then how are you going to execute it? Where's it going to be made, and the pieces of it, and what's it gonna is it gonna be made out of plastic or is it gonna be made out of an alloy? It gets really, really detailed. Again, I've worked with a lot of y'all that are doing this. Salute to y'all. It can get very, very complicated. And then the third part of it, of course, is the same as the software one, is how you're going to market it and get it to the right people. So if you come from an engineering background, maybe you can engineer the heck out of it, but you might not know the physical parts of it as far as how to make it physically real. And you might know how to make it physically real, but you might not know how to get it to the appropriate people. As you work through these pieces, then partnerships, as I talked about in the previous segment, become priceless. It can save you tons and tons of money. It can save you some heartache. And so connecting with organizations is a good first step if you feel as though you have some support you need to get. So the first thing, as we talked about in the in the first segment, is to find out where your weak spots are. Again, I'm not a great physical designer as far as drawing. That's not my strength. I have a lot of other strengths, but that's not my strength. So if I were to launch my next product, or more than likely I'm more of a service guy, my next service, then I would make sure I partner with someone who can draw really well or who can design on paper really, really well. Because that's not a strength of mine. That's not the way that I operate. So that's one, is to find out where you need the support. Number two, I would recommend connecting with organizations that actually represent those people. I've been a longtime member and used to be a board member of the American Society of Journalists and Authors, ASJ. They're at asja.org. So if someone was not strong in the writing department, or they wanted to connect with journalists or with authors, or I do ghostwriting, so if they wanted to find a ghostwriter and stuff like that, then connecting with an organization or even going to places or functions with ASJ would make sense, because they're surrounded by people who are strong with the written and spoken word, mostly written word. That's where you go. Just like because I'm not a strong artist, then I would go to the art networks, whether it's online, virtual, or go to the networking events. And it's like, hey, I'm looking for artists, and I could probably throw a dime and hit five of them, And so finding out where they hang out and finding ways again to partner with them. The third part about it is to actually find a way to get them what they need, get you what you need, make sure the contracts are good, and then you'll be able to move forward with it. Again, as I talked about in the previous segment, we sometimes get caught up because we're trying to figure out everything on our own, particularly us as solopreneurs. I get it. You got my sympathy. But we're not supposed to figure out everything on our own. That's literally what the internet is for, at least how we're going to use it today. That's what networks are for. That's what organizations are for. Even for some of these organizations, I bet you can reach out to them, and then they probably have a job board, or even if it's a casual thing on if they have a page on one of the social media platforms, find their pages and then build from there. I think that's a great way to fill in those missing pieces for our product, because usually with the coaching that I do, there can be complex issues, and a lot of the stuff that I do is psychological. So it could be complex issues where sometimes we're afraid of success or afraid of failure. Sometimes we got burnt because we tried to launch something in the past and we don't want to go through that again. Excuse me. Sometimes there's the emotional baggage with that, which I'm happy to get deep into. If you've coached with me, we've had some of those conversations. But sometimes it's just because we're trying to do everything on our own. And so because we feel like we do everything on our own, then we're waiting for things to click, but then we don't have all the strengths, and so nothing ends up happening. And then we end up in the same place. I don't want you to be in the same place, as I mentioned several times in this episode. And so this is a way for us to move forward. Now, if there's specific things that you want to go ahead and get off the ground, then I have some platforms that can totally help you with that. And so let's talk about the first one. It's called Selfie. We talked about it briefly in the previous episode. Selfie is cool because it allows you to have a storefront, which again, we talked about in the previous episode. Rewind if you missed that one. Sell your products, as they say, hassle free, easy setup, it becomes your storefront. But here's where it gets interesting, is it actually has most of the different bits and pieces that I would say probably 80% of y'all would actually need. So if you want to sell digital products, shout to my musicians. I love y'all. You know who you are. Books, I sell books, videos, games, tutorials, cooking lessons, print on demand, subscription services, what? Pretty much everywhere you need to be, as well as some customizable store templates. Again, we got much deeper into the store templates in the previous episode. This allows you to actually partner in a virtual way, in a way that might be a little bit safer or smoother than having to find a partner or someone you're going to work with. When I say partner, I don't mean a 50-50 partner. I mean literally someone who's going to help you achieve what you want to achieve with your product or service. Selfie is a really good place to start. And we actually have a special deal going on with Selfie, specifically for Bring Your Worth audiences, specifically you. If you type in the code special, then you'll get an even bigger discount than a discount that we're currently working with. But be sure and check them out and see what's happening with them. If you're a little bit more focused and you want to get a little bit more granular with it, and you want to do specifically print on demand, specifically for clothing, then let's go. Then let's go ahead. Sorry, these cookies drive me nuts. There we go. Clothing, physical goods, Printify's got you. You see the bags, you see the shirts. Actually, I'm getting some new Bring Your Worth TV shirts on. So I'm actually making them right now, which is why I'm not wearing it. I usually have my shirts, my own, but I'm doing a little bit of a reboot. Shout out to beehive.com because they're doing my newsletter. So I got their shirt on today. But got the bags, you see all this. Start with zero investment. You see the vibes. And so then they already have structures that are set for you. So actually, my phone is being used over there. But if you want the phone cases and all that, you can see it right there. You design it. This is a basic enough design where even if design is not your strength, you'll be okay. But heck, maybe, as I talked about in the previous segment, you want to hire a designer. Maybe the designer can work with you on Printify. And that's the vibes with it. And again, a really good opportunity. And you see what they say, see how much you can make. And so they break down as far as what the costs are. So you have a certain cost, of course, it's called manufacturing costs to creating the thing. When it comes to, remember, there's product, and then there's software. When it comes to software, there's usually a lower overhead because there's so many things that software needs, such as server space, such as app store costs and stuff like that. Back when I did, me and my partners did Cuddler about a decade ago. Then those things were way higher, right? We had to figure out a way to finance those things, and actually, my co-founders are super creative with it. So shout out to them. But I had to find a way to finance that thing. Now they're a lot lower when it comes to software. So if you want to launch an app right now, it'll be relatively cheap, right? Products, though, products are products because it needs to be created, right? You need to have the shipping costs. You need to have the fabric, et cetera, et cetera. This will break it down for you. This is right on the front page. So there's a lot of transparency there. I appreciate them a lot, and thank you for having the special deal as far as with Bring Your Worth folks as well. Got to deal with them. Be sure and check it out, and that'll give you a good discount. If we're going to talk about this, we need to talk about getting ready for your first sale ever. Our next episode is going to be about getting paid. Has to do with, yes, you ship your first product. Yes, stuff starts coming in. You could have the best product in the world, but if you don't have an easy way for people to purchase it, then you're not going to be able to sustain yourself as a business, whether it's a side hustle, solopreneurship, whatever. Because then people won't be able to take care of you. As one mentor said many, many years ago, don't make it hard for people to uh, to buy from you. To Don't make it hard for you to be able to serve them. Don't make it hard for you to be able to serve your customers. Believe it or not, they're paying for your goods, yes, for sure, but you're providing a service. Otherwise, they wouldn't be buying your goods. So why make it harder for them? Very brief clip that from about 3 or 4 months ago, I believe. Be sure and check it out, and it'll get you in the right mindset. Because the episode after this is going to be talking about how to get paid. It's called e-commerce. So a lot of it's e-commerce as far as how to get paid online and make sure that it's smooth, as well as in person called POS, point of sale, POS. If you're a POS, it's not someone cursing you out. It's actually point of sale. That means that if you see me doing a keynote and you want to buy one of my books after the keynote, then I'm able to make that purchase without telling you to go to a website. That's POS. Still important. I don't care what virtual age we're in, Zoomers and all that. Still need the POS. We're going to talk all about it in the next episode. And why don't you go and hop in the comments and let us know, is there a particular block or particular challenge you're having to getting your product out the door? As Steve Jobs said and other folks have said, without shipping it, it's not it's not going to get to your customer. and you're missing a piece of showing up. And it's such an important thing. Saw the t-shirts a minute ago and thought, Sam, I need to make some t-shirts. You sure do. Yeah, like I said, yeah, I'm wearing the Beehive t-shirt. Shout out to Beehive, Beehive. Shout out to them. They handle my newsletter. My are getting remade and redesigned as we speak. So that's real talk. And so, what are the things that are actually blocking y'all from shipping your product, from getting your product together? Because without getting your product together, it's really tough to actually build a business. And we're going to be talking about that in the next episode. Ah, GTTG shirts coming soon. Okay, you heard it here first. Exclusive. I would start doing the mixtape voice, but I don't want to lose my voice. Thank you, Carlos, for the exclusive. Speaking of, get ready for your first sale ever. If you're watching this on the rerun or in the clip, then it'll automatically take you over to that one. Or if the next episode is available, then it'll go ahead and drift you over there. For right now, you can check out the whole series. Start your business right now. This is episode 2. Until next time, remember you can always bring your worth. You can always build from now. Take care of yourselves and others.